Welcome to Healthy Living. I'm Lori Johnson. Thanks for joining us today. Our topic is how to prevent almost all disease, including our biggest killers. We're talking about cancer, heart disease, even Alzheimer's, and even reversing some of these diseases in many cases, and how to live a long, healthy life. My guest is Dr. Casey Means, author of the book Good Energy, The Surprising Connection Between Metabolism and Limitless Health. Dr. Means, thank you so much for being here. It's great to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Well, right off the bat, I have to say I absolutely loved the book. I highly recommend it. I see why it was #1 on Amazon for 4 weeks before it even launched, because it's so practical and really you boil everything down into the root cause of almost all disease, and that is metabolism. Can you talk a little bit about what metabolism is? And you talk about mitochondria a lot as well, and it doesn't really need to be very complicated.
That's exactly right. The message of this book is that there is this foundational process happening in our bodies all the time, which is metabolism, which is the root of all health, because it's how we actually make energy in the body. All of our cells need energy to function properly, and that happens through metabolism. And in the American body today, 93% of American adults have metabolic dysfunction. This is caused by our toxic food system and our modern lifestyle, which has changed rapidly over the past 50 to 75 years. And our cells really are having trouble doing their most foundational process, which is metabolism. So as a physician and as a surgeon, what I saw in the healthcare system is that we're spending more money every single year on treating diseases, but patients in America aren't really getting better. Our rates of chronic illnesses are going up every single year. The more money we spend on healthcare, the sicker we're getting. We're focusing on the wrong problem. We're focusing on the downstream manifestations of metabolic disease rather than the root cause itself. And it's actually, like you mentioned, quite simple to fix. We have to support our mitochondrial health. Our mitochondria are the parts of the cell that make energy. They're really the hub of metabolism. And right now, our modern world is breaking our mitochondrial function. And this leads to every imaginable chronic disease we're facing today, from cancer to heart disease, stroke, Alzheimer's, dementia, type 2 diabetes, obesity, depression, anxiety, migraine, infertility, erectile dysfunction, you name it, it's linked to metabolic disease. So if we truly want to follow the science, as everyone says we need to be doing, what we would do is focus on metabolic dysfunction as the key central point of our healthcare focus. And if we did that, we'd see people improve rapidly across many different diseases.
Your story, sadly, your mother passed away in 2021, your mother, Gail, and that really affected you, as it would any of us. But as a physician, especially, and then also in your training to become an ENT surgeon, you sort of walked away from that path. So can you talk about those two major events in your life and how they affected you into what you're doing now, which is functional medicine?
That's exactly right. So I had done, what every young science-focused pre-med in the country really wants to do, which is sort of climb the ranks of academic medicine. I went to Stanford undergrad, Stanford Medical School, ended up training as a head and neck surgeon. And, this was checking all the boxes. But 9 years into my surgical training and medical training, I realized something that really kind of woke me out of my slumber, which was that we are focused on hyper specialization in the American healthcare system. We actually associate specialization and technological innovation with advancement. But in reality, the more we specialize in our American healthcare system, the sicker we're getting. We have over 100 medical and surgical subspecialties. And unfortunately, what the science is really showing us is that many of the conditions we're treating in all these different specialties are fundamentally rooted in the same thing, which is the foundational problem with how our cells are working, metabolic dysfunction. So if you think of it visually, the trunk of the tree of all these seemingly disparate diseases and symptoms we're facing is the same thing. So for some issues, specialization is great, but what we really need to focus on is this core connecting point between so much of what we're ailing from. So I'm in the operating room day in and day out doing sinus surgery and ear surgery and these hyper specialized surgeries. And what I really realize is that we're missing the forest for the trees here. We're focusing on the downstream end result of core issues that we can control and improve with simple dietary and lifestyle fixes. And we're ignoring that. And the unfortunate reality of why we are ignoring the root causes in the Western medical system is because it's profitable to. If we can essentially let everyone in America get very, very sick and then only at the very late stages, sort of manage and treat these chronic issues over the long term, that's very profitable. If we actually cure a patient, we're losing a customer. And so that's a very dark reality. But the financial incentive of the American healthcare system is to do more to more patients over a longer period of time. And this is essentially the chronic disease model. So I had to actually leave this hyper specialized surgical world to focus on the root causes of why American patients are sick and what we can actually do about it. And that led me really so much more to functional medicine. At a similar time, I was dealing with all of this awakening in my own family, in our home life, where my mom, who was my best friend and just the most amazing woman I've ever met, unfortunately paid the ultimate price for the healthcare system ignoring root causes. And she died at 72 of cancer after really 40 years of missed warning signs about metabolic disease. She had racked up a lot of the American diagnoses, the high cholesterol, the high blood pressure, the high blood sugar. She had seen her doctors faithfully, taken all the medications, done exactly what they said. But the reality is she never healed. She was being managed, but not healed. And then, of course, she got this lethal cancer diagnosis and died very, very quickly. And so my hope with both my personal journey, seeing really deep inside the healthcare system, and sort of the systematic, entrenched, lack of recognition of root causes, and then also with my mother's story, I think what I was really born to do and what I'm here to do on this planet is help spread the word about what we're ignoring in the Western healthcare system and what individuals can do to understand this in their own bodies, and actually how simple it is to improve these foundational pathways that can allow a lot of our symptoms to, in many ways, really melt away.
So you got off the track, the treadmill, and you feel that really helped you with your mental health. And one thing that really shocked me, you said suicide and burnout rates are astronomical in healthcare, with approximately 400 doctors per year killing themselves, the equivalent of 4 medical school graduating classes dying every year at their own hand. And then you say, I think a contributor to this phenomenon is an insidious spiritual crisis about the efficacy of our work and a sense of being trapped in a system that is not working but seems too big to change or escape. Can you elaborate on the suicide and the connection between being in the system?
Yeah. Every single doctor I've ever met and healthcare practitioner got into medicine to help people. These are good people working their tails off, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to get educated in hopes of curing disease and making people healthier. But unfortunately, these are good people going to a system with financial incentives that are not aligned with human health. So the systems issues and the incentives issues are unfortunately creating an invisible hand, which is making a lot of good people practice, in many cases, bad medicine that doesn't truly heal, but manages and treats. And so I think that what we're seeing with the really high rates, astronomical rates of burnout, depression, and, as you mentioned, suicide amongst healthcare professionals has a lot to do with investing decades of the prime years of our lives training to do a particular act of service, and then being so deep in that system and realizing that that's really not what we're trained to do. I mean, that was the awakening that I had, was really realizing that I went into healthcare to heal, and really what I was doing was essentially surgeries that were plumbing, rearranging anatomic body parts, and then prescribing people pills, but not really thinking about how to actually help a patient thrive. So that's what I think is going on. And, I think on top of that, there is a spiritual crisis going on where the healthcare system is so much predicated on fear. We have a very despiritualized Western culture in many ways, and we are living in a lot of fear, I think, as Americans today. The media coming in through our devices 24 hours a day is fear-inducing. It's sensationalist. We can see the fears and traumas of 8 billion people around the world streaming to our phones every day. We've got a healthcare system which really has, its dictum is not to make us thrive, but to really just do anything we can to prevent death. We've got a culture that really doesn't have a great framework by and large for thinking about the miraculousness of the body and the fact that we get to be here at all. And I think a confluence of all these things is leading both patients and doctors to just be acting out of a place of fear, which honestly makes us make bad decisions. I think if we spent more time reflecting on the true miracle of being alive and our capacity to create life in this world, we would make so many better decisions about our diet and our lifestyle and how we treat this miracle of the body. And so I think there's an aspect of that too, where we are sort of in a mass forgetting about the preciousness of this opportunity to be conscious spiritual beings in this body that we need to respect if we want to be able to reach our highest purpose in this lifetime. And I think all of that's coming together to create a healthcare system that's very sterilized and really devoid of the true meaning that we're all seeking.
A lot of fear on the part of doctors and patients. We're going to take a break and be right back with Dr. Casey Means. The book is called Good Energy. Stay with us. Welcome back to Healthy Living. We're talking with Dr. Casey Means, author of the book Good Energy. And Dr. Means, one of the things that you said was pushing pills and interventions when an ultra-aggressive stance on diet and behavior would do far more for the patient. Can you talk about what that means?
The conditions that are torturing American lives and shortening American lives these days are fundamentally rooted in our choices and our diet and our lifestyle. These are the chronic conditions that are accounting for 9 of the 10 leading causes of death in the United States. And we know that about 90% of healthcare costs, we spend $4.3 trillion per year on healthcare costs in the United States, they're going towards conditions rooted in poor diet and our unfortunately increasingly toxic lifestyle. When I speak about diet and lifestyle, I'm talking about the food we're eating, how we're sleeping, our movement patterns, our emotional and spiritual health, our exposure to environmental toxins, our relationship with light, like sunlight or blue light. And those are sort of the main facets we're talking about. Those things have radically changed. And the signals that our cells are sort of expecting from the environment are not what they once were throughout all of human history. We now have this ultra urbanized digital world that's very isolated. And so our cells are living in a very, very different world. And what that's resulting in is an expression from the cells of dysfunction. The cells are essentially saying, we can't tolerate this industrial urbanized, chemical filled environment with ultra processed food, and the result is widespread chronic disease. So 90% of our healthcare costs are going towards those diseases, and yet the average medical student in the United States does not take a single class in nutrition in medical school. So 4 years of medical school, 3 to 7 years of residency, and we are not talking about nutrition or lifestyle virtually at all. So there's this huge mismatch between what's causing diseases and then what doctors are trained to understand and treat. So even though our lifestyles are fundamentally driving our illness and our healthcare costs, doctors are using the only tool that they're really trained to use, which is intervention-based approaches, pills, surgeries. Those are easier, quicker to give to a patient. It's a lot harder to counsel a patient for an hour on their lifestyle and their diet than send them with a prescription for a pill. And so this is creating a real issue for patients where we are both dependent on the healthcare system. It's really our only option for getting care right now through insurance, and yet we are being let down by it and not getting the vibrant health that so many of us want. So that's the landscape that we're living in. And the hopeful news is that people can actually really be their own advocates when it comes to their health. They can understand their bodies better. They can understand how these different pillars like food and movement and emotional and spiritual health impact their biology. And we can even track it ourselves with really amazing technology today, like wearables. I'm wearing an Oura Ring right now, direct-to-consumer lab testing, things like continuous glucose monitors. So it's both a difficult time for American health right now across the lifespan, but it's also a very optimistic time because of the knowledge, tools, and technology that we have accessible to us today.
So when you mentioned the contributing factors, I think there were 6 of them where you talked about diet and movement and light and connecting with nature. What is the most important one?
The one that we can't get around is food. I think that something really important for people to understand is that 70% of the calories we're eating in the United States today are ultra processed foods made in factories. This is food that our bodies throughout all of human history never were exposed to. And essentially, we should think of ultra processed food as a recent experiment in human culture that has failed. We know that ultra processed foods drive diseases in children, in infants, in adults, and the elderly. It's contributing to behavioral problems, learning problems, obesity, diabetes, infertility, all the way to Alzheimer's, cancer, type 2 diabetes, and strokes, and of course, cancer. So, ultra processed foods, 70% of our calories, they are not working for our bodies. We need to be switching to fresh, unprocessed, organic food that is not covered in synthetic pesticides, billions and billions of pounds of pesticides, which we know are toxic to our bodies, are sprayed in our food system every single year. We've got to focus on the freshest, cleanest, unprocessed whole foods as possible. So that's number one. Our bodies are molecularly fully built from food.
Yeah.
And the atoms in our body that make up our cells, which determine our health, are made of food. And a framework I present in the book that I think is really important for people to understand, is really awe-inspiring to me, is that the body is a process. We're not a thing. We're not a static body that is the same throughout our lifetime. We're constantly turning over. And every day when we eat food, we are putting in the building blocks to create the version of our body of tomorrow. And so there's always hope to improve our health because we're constantly turning over and changing. And food is, it's just one of the things we've got to get right to build the structure and the function for health.
That's number one. All right, we're going to take another break and be right back with Dr. Casey Means. The book is called Good Energy. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're continuing our discussion with Dr. Casey Means, author of the book Good Energy. And you were saying before the break that ultra-processed food has to go. And one of the things that I thought was so interesting that I don't feel like a lot of our viewers understand is the danger of these ultra-processed vegetables and seed oils. Everybody knows about sugar. We've been talking about that and added sugars, but a lot of folks don't understand the good oils and the bad oils. So can you talk about those?
Absolutely. So the predominant form of fat that Americans are eating today is ultra-processed, industrially manufactured soybean oil. So this is oil that, again, humans weren't exposed to throughout most of human history. It's made in a factory through a very complex synthetic processing of bleaching and dewaxing and chemical extraction, heating these oils to ultra high temperatures, which makes them rancid. And they're not good for our bodies. They cause inflammation. They cause what's called oxidative stress, which is sort of damaging molecules building up in the body. And they are now the number one source of fat we're eating in our lives today, causing essentially harm while not really adding any benefit to our bodies. So what we really want to get back to is natural forms of fat that we've been eating for millennia. So this is things like animal fats, like ghee and tallow from grass-fed beef. We want fats that come from plants where if you smush the plant, the oil just comes out. So this is like avocado oil. If you just smush an avocado, you get avocado oil. This is olive oil. These are things that don't have to be chemically extracted from plants like canola. So we love olive oil, coconut oil, animal fats like grass-fed ghee, tallow, and butter. And then, of course, fats that we can get from whole animal foods like salmon and mackerel, sardines, beef, eggs, things like this. So those are the main fats that I cook with and use. They have high smoke points and they're not going to go rancid. The ones we really want to avoid are the vegetable oils, canola oils, corn oil, peanut oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, and things like that. And we always want to choose organic when we can because it's going to have more nutrients and antioxidants than the fats that we're eating.
But don't most restaurants and fast food places only use those oils?
That's true. Most restaurants, unless they are explicitly advertising that they are using high quality oils, are using vegetable oils and often reusing them at high heat over the course of weeks, which is very damaging to our health. 6 in 10 American adults have a chronic disease at this point. And when you look at some of these realities, like what restaurants are using, it makes sense. We're using essentially trash oils and it's making us sick. And so we really want to be very conscious about the restaurants that we're patroning and going to. There are some amazing companies that are switching to non-industrial seed oils. For instance, Sweet Green, which is a fast casual salad chain all over the country, has just switched to avocado and olive oil. And this, of course, is a huge hit for health-focused consumers. There's also a great online service called Seed Oil Scout, where you can actually look up restaurants and what oils they're using. You would be shocked to find how few restaurants are using high quality oils. And it's all for the purpose of cost that they're using the health destroying oils. And so we just really need to be really advocates for finding places that are using the good oils and ask our favorite restaurants to switch over, because sometimes they don't even know.
This is great information. We're going to take one final break and be right back with Dr. Casey Means. The book is called Good Energy. Welcome back to Healthy Living. We're just continuing our discussion with Dr. Casey Means. The book is called Good Energy, and we were talking about the oils are such a problem. And here's something I wanted to ask you about canola oil. So we hear so many people saying, oh, canola oil, it's healthy. And, Whole Foods, they say, oh, we cook in canola oil, it's so good. But you're saying it isn't.
Yeah, I don't touch canola oil. First of all, it's rarely going to be organic, and the real issue with it is that it's processed at extremely high temperatures, which can really oxidize the oils, which is bad for our body. It's very high in omega-6 fatty acid to omega-3 ratio. So in our body, we need a mix of different types of fat, things like omega-6s, omega-9s, omega-3s, but we need them in the right ratios. And by and large, for human health, we usually want a 1-to-1 ratio between omega-3s to omega-6s. Omega-6s tend to be more inflammatory, omega-3s more anti-inflammatory. And a lot of these oils will have a 20-to-1 ratio of omega-6 to omega-3s. So it's really overwhelming our bodies with this inflammatory fat, which in small quantities we need, but in the quantities we're eating today in the American diet, they are tipping the scales towards inflammation, which is, of course, the root of so many chronic diseases.
All right, Dr. Means, thank you so much for being with us today. The book, once again, is called Good Energy, The Surprising Connection Between Metabolism and Limitless Health. Thank you so much for being with us today. We so appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And thanks to you for joining us for this edition of Healthy Living. I'm Lori Johnson, and we'll see you again next week.